I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you feel your vote counts?
Yes, I think every single individual vote counts.
No, I don't, because we do not have a very good democracy here in Canada.
This is a privilege.
As citizens, we have a responsibility to participate in democracy whenever we can.
As we gear up for Election Day, which is drawing ever closer, millions of Canadians will be heading to the polls and advance polls to cast their ballots. Many will tell you in this country, voting is a right that should be exercised. But there are some who feel their vote, no matter which party they want to support, won't make a difference depending on where they live. We took to the streets across the country to ask Canadians if they feel their opinion matters in this federal election campaign. Our question: do you feel your vote counts?
Absolutely. Even though I haven't won, but 100%. We live in a country where that's how we can make our voice be heard. So, I mean, if you're not going to vote, you don't deserve to even have an opinion, never mind sharing it. I mean, yeah, I vote. I know that my candidate is probably not going to win, but I'm still going to go and vote.
I think that my vote counts. I don't think that voting is the only way that we can engage with democracy, though, and I think that as citizens we have a responsibility to participate in democracy whenever we can, so that includes voting. But I think there's a lot of other ways that we can make sure our votes count, and that's by participating in different committees, in doing surveys, in answering questions, in engaging with different politicians and different parties and different movements, including lobby groups and special interest groups. So yes, my vote counts, but those other things count too.
No, I don't. Actually, I don't think I'm going to bother voting anymore. I'm not going to participate in that corruption anymore. It's just a waste of time. I voted all my life, and I don't really feel that it makes sense to participate in something that's so corrupted and so controlled. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what the truth is anymore. So how can you make an informed decision?
Yes, I do. I do think my vote counts. I think that if every person in democracy comes together for a cause or for a certain politician, if we all work together, yes, I think every single individual vote counts.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, it rarely comes down to a vote, but yeah, everybody's got to vote, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and especially just talking about it too with your friends and family is so important. Really influences people to get out there and vote.
Sometimes it's the difference, one vote in a riding or one vote in, a larger area really makes a difference. And so I would say that before my opinion might have been a little shaky, but now I do believe that my opinion or my vote does count.
No. Because of the method of voting that we have right now, where the seats are chosen as per constituency, if I don't vote according to the constituency or the majority of voters, my vote is thrown away. So it only counts when they look at the popular vote, but that does not affect the results of the election.
Yes, in Fredericton, I do feel like my vote counts. I think last election was really exciting. In Fredericton, we managed to elect a Green MP, and she really did take our voice to Ottawa, and you heard that in the House. She spoke more than any other politician from Atlantic Canada did, and those were our voices heading into that parliament. Now she's part of the ruling party, of course, and it remains to be seen whether that will be able to continue. But I think in Fredericton, we managed to elect someone from a third party. We saw the impact that could have in national politics.
No, I don't, because we do not have a very good democracy here in Canada. And so we do need electoral reform, because no, I don't believe that, unfortunately, in this country, one vote doesn't really equate to it being a very fair and democratic process. So we need electoral reform.
Every vote counts. If you don't vote, you have no right to complain. This is plain and simple. Don't complain about anything. If you didn't vote, I don't want to hear it. If you vote, then you have all the right to complain about anything.
So I live in quite a conservative riding, and I don't necessarily always vote that way. So sometimes I do feel like my vote doesn't necessarily count, but it doesn't stop me from voting.
You might vote for a Conservative, the Conservatives didn't win. Maybe you voted for the Green Party, they didn't win. But like I said, every vote counts and every voice will be heard, and no matter what happens, at least you voted and at least you gave an effort to actually fix this country.
Oh, most definitely. Anyone has a right to vote, should vote. If you don't vote, don't complain.
Yes, absolutely. Just as much as yours and anybody else's. Actually, being in PI more than most people's ridings are so small.
I'd like to. I like to think it counts. I vote anyway, and that's all you can do, right?
Of course. I think everyone votes counts. You know, I think everyone should vote. Anyone over the age of 18, you know, vote, vote, vote. I can't, you know, encourage that enough, especially people of my age. You know, a lot of people my age think we don't really have the power to change anything in Canada, but we have the most power. You know, we're the youngest generation right now, and moving forward, we're going to be living in Canada, and we want to see Canada to be, you know, a positive place to live in, somewhere we can call home. And I think, of course, I encourage voting. I'll vote myself, and hoping for the best for Canada, honestly.
Yes, everybody's vote counts. Particularly as women, we fought for many years to get the vote, and you can't waste it. You've got to decide and use it. Don't throw it away. So many places don't have that advantage, so many places around the world. So I think we have to.
This federal election comes in the midst of a fourth wave, with COVID numbers rising in certain parts of the country to levels we haven't seen in months. And that has some voters feeling unsure and unsafe about the timing of this. But there have been 5 provincial elections in this country since this pandemic began, with more on the horizon. So is the timing of this as good as any, or should we have held off for a while? Our question.
How do you feel about a federal election during the pandemic?
Well, the pandemic is going to be around for a long time, probably. The remnants of it anyway, variants, will keep arising, and so therefore an election is probably appropriate, as long as we're not in a heavy shutdown.
I don't think it's wise. I think that during pandemic we're all nervous and stressed and a little bit unreasonable, believing the fear, and so I don't think we would make a logical and clear decision.
I mean, I guess they got to call it sometime, but I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit too cynical, but I just feel like they're going to call it when they think it's most advantageous to them. That's how it generally works.
I think society has essentially progressed to the point where we have the infrastructure to conduct an election, and where if the occasion arises, I don't see any reason against it.
I think it's not a good idea. I think people actually need to, if they're all vaccinated, fine. If they're not, then stay home, keep social distancing, wear your mask, and don't crowd into a voting area.
I think like our provincial election here was called in the middle of a pandemic, but at the time our numbers were low, everything seemed reasonable, so I think the decisions at that time were justified. And I think all of the hoopla about it should never have occurred during a pandemic were political rankering.
In my opinion, a lot of voting can be either social distance or mail-in ballots and stuff like that, so I don't see why we couldn't do it safely.
I think I'd prefer that we didn't have one. It doesn't seem that they need to call an election at this point. I don't think there's any reason to call one at this point.
I don't think that going through a pandemic and trying to run an election is a smart thing to do. So I wouldn't want to have to go and vote. I mean, we did for the city elections, but I think that they should wait until the pandemic's been cleared and things are back to normal, maybe another year or so.
Nope, that's a no, because some people are scared from the pandemic still. They're still taking some precautions, you know. So I would say they should wait until the COVID, obviously the pandemic should be over, then vote. That way we get the better voting system.
I'm somewhat comfortable with it. I think like vaccine numbers across the country have, like, people are more vaccinated, and maybe it's an opportunity to look at other avenues of voting, online voting, or voting ahead. You know, maybe it can be an opportunity to get more votes if you look at different ways of casting your ballot. So maybe that's too early or too short notice to make those types of plans, but I'm okay with it during a pandemic, to answer your question. I think it can be done.
I'm totally against that.
I just don't think it's the right time to do that.
No, that's a stupid idea. I think the fact that we're moving so quickly along with restrictions as is terrible. Having a federal election now would be even worse. It'd be a terrible idea. We should focus more so on getting everyone vaccinated and focusing on ensuring that we can get the economy and having everything open much more smoothly and safely, rather than focusing on having such a quick federal election.
Well, I would say that any change would be a good thing, considering how poorly the current government has managed the whole situation. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but their best isn't good enough.
During the pandemic itself, they did it down the States, and they did it quite successfully. Although some people would disagree with that, they did. During the pandemic itself would have been a bit more of a situation, although we're still in the pandemic and we have a ways to go yet. I'm not as concerned as I was before, but if we follow the policies and the practices going in to vote and whatnot, it shouldn't be a problem, so I'm not that concerned.
I have mixed feelings on it. I feel like it's hard to get everyone to actually go out and vote more so now than it would have been before, because some people might be scared or paranoid about the whole COVID thing. But I think it's important to also make a change as soon as you can.
And right now to have an election, I just don't think it's the right time. I mean, give them at least 3 years. I mean, they haven't even been in 2 yet. So, I mean, it's just, it's kind of bad timing in my estimation. But yeah.
Honestly, we've had in New Brunswick 2 elections so far, and they went fine. I don't see any issue doing it on the federal side. Yes, it makes it difficult for campaigning. But I really do appreciate seeing the variances in the campaign and the effort that the candidates are going through to actually get out there and talk to you without actually getting out there and bothering you at your house. It's a new world. It's engaging a lot more voters that they wouldn't have engaged with traditional means. So I think, honestly, having it under the pandemic has shown us a lot of ingenuity that people can come up with and creativity, and as well giving us a better view of who they actually are versus the standard meet and greet that most people try to pass off as a campaign.
The longest federal election in modern Canadian history took place in what year? 1958, 1993, 2015. 58, 93, or 2015?
I'm going to say 1993.
2015? 2015.
93.
93.
Well, it wouldn't have been 15, that was half. Let's say 58.
2015.
Absolutely correct.
The 2015 federal election campaign was the longest in modern Canadian history. The election began on August 4th of that year, and voting day was on October 19th, a total of 11 weeks or 78 days. The 1872 campaign lasted 89 days, but did not practice one-day votes, as we do today. According to Elections Canada, a minimum campaign must be 36 days, but there was no maximum length for a federal election campaign at the time. But since 2015, the maximum number of days was changed to 50 days, up to Election Day. Following a long stretch of cross-country campaigning for most of the federal leaders, and while Prime Minister Stephen Harper was looking for his 4th consecutive mandate, Justin Trudeau's Liberals became the first federal party in Canadian history to win a majority without being the governing party or official opposition leading up to an election.
The whole point of voting is having a choice to pick the person or party which you feel best represents your vision of this country moving forward, while many have already decided which direction their support will go. In some cases, it will depend on who is running in their particular riding. So, we took this question to Canadians.
How do you decide which candidate will get your vote?
I always decide by the individual person running in my riding, regardless of who the leader is personally.
Why?
Because the person is important rather than just the party. I do tend more Liberal than PC, but it always depends on the person in my riding.
I look at the candidate that as you know, experience in the neighborhood. I look for a candidate because I have post-secondary education. I look for a candidate with some post-secondary education. I don't discriminate, but I prefer that. And I like a candidate who's done many things, worked, raised a family, all those things, yes.
I would decide which candidate would get my vote based on whether or not they believe in science and are willing to follow science and support science. I think that's really important.
For me, it'll probably fall to which party they represent. I recognize that in Canadian politics, the individual isn't as important as the party, unfortunately. So I will be leaning more towards a party than an individual.
Locally, I would say I would check out the federal platform for the party. And if I am comfortable with the federal platform, then I would then look at the local candidate and see if, they've done anything sketchy in their past or something like that. And, are they the type of person I actually want to represent me locally? Because I think that matters just as much as the party you're voting for.
Well, at this point, I'm probably not thinking so much about individual candidates and more about the larger national consequences of whoever forms government. So yeah, it's kind of more a process of reading larger national politics and larger national political dynamics onto the consequences of whoever is elected at a local level. So yeah.
Well, for me, my biggest issue is climate. At some point, I'm going to want to be able to retire. I'm going to want to be able to enjoy this beautiful community. I want people talking about how they're going to address climate change. I want to hear about how they're going to address adapting to what our climate's becoming and how they are going to help keep us safe and help keep the environment safe and species safe. That's my big issue. I want kids to have a beautiful place to grow up and a planet that's just as beautiful that I had to grow up in.
Definitely as a first-time voter, I think I'm going to be taking a heavy look at their platforms. And also I think I'll be taking a look at each of the parties' histories and their voting records to see that if they really, if what they actually do aligns with what they say they're going to do. I have a deep interest in social issues, and I'll definitely be making sure that whichever party I'm voting for is socially progressive enough and working to actually solve the issues that my generation has today.
How do I decide? I listen to them, and I'm very concerned about climate and the environment, especially mining, gold mining in our province, and the reliance on foreign corporations to save us. So I'm looking at what they say about that kind of thing.
I look more at their morals and ethics, and I actually try and assess, are you actually going to do what you say you're going to do? And a lot of times, most fail.
What is their true character? Is there a character, do they have an ulterior motive? Are they actually, what they saying, is that actually true, or are they just smoke and mirrors? Do they actually care for the working class of Canadians? Do they actually care? Do they want to help this country, or are they just doing this just for the sake of, so that their party can say another 4 years or so in office?
Sometimes I vote by the person, sometimes I vote by the party. It just depends on the situation that we're in. And unlike Gord here, I used to get really involved in politics and knock on doors, etc., but I don't do that anymore because I'm really disillusioned with the choices that we have. So sometimes it's a protest vote.
Well, we pay attention to the details when there's advertising ahead of time, and government programs, that present government that is in, and what is happening with regard to a competitive stance, other parties, and what they're doing, and where that fits in terms of how we feel as individuals, and then you roll the dice and you make up your mind.
Follow through. If you're standing on a point, then stand by it and follow through with it, and people will start paying closer attention.
Somebody you feel like you can actually trust.
Yeah.
Someone that I think will represent us fairly and will be not afraid to stand up in the House of Commons. That's sort of the qualities I look for. And under our parliamentary system, you also have to think of the overall party, because you're also going for the leader as well, right? So it's a combination depending on how they play out with their various issues.
During any given election campaign, there are those who identify themselves as party faithful, those who will stick with their preferred party through thick and thin, while others may remain undecided and throw their support towards a particular party or even a candidate, depending on which position he or she may take. We set out to ask Canadians what it is that will have a bigger influence on how they decide their vote. Our question:
what is more important to you, the party or the platform?
The platform. Because the policies and the substantive decisions that a political party makes and implements are more important than what the party's reputation is or what they represent optically in the federal policy sphere.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand, but I would say the platform. I'm not particularly faithful party-wise. It's just a question of what are they actually theoretically going to do for us.
Easily the platform. Yeah, I don't really care about the party itself. I'm interested in what ideas they bring forward, by far. I could care less about the party, truthfully.
It's easy to get caught up in a party label and get associated, but I think at the end of the day, the platform is the thing that really impacts your life, what policies are enacted, those sorts of things.
About half and half. I mean, I've been a one-party person pretty much my whole life, so it's but I generally agree with the direction they go in.
The platform is more important to me than the party because I believe that traditionally people have voted along party lines and not necessarily looked into the issues that are at hand. So the platform is much more important to me.
What's important to me is what the party does and its record of doing things. And for example, when people voted Liberal in the last election, I don't think they expected $5.5 billion to be spent buying a pipeline.
I don't see how voting along party lines helps you if they're not dealing with the issues. The issues change and your approach has to change. I mean, COVID has taught us pivoting, and pivoting. So, I think all parties have to sort of adjust to that, and how they decide to do that will influence my vote, as opposed to saying, no, I don't vote Liberal or I don't vote Conservative.
A sense that they're actually committed to enacting their platform, at least as much as they can, because I think we've seen a lot of examples in the past of platform promises that don't get fulfilled. And so I'd really like to have a strong sense that it's not just an election promise, that it's something that they'll be committed to in the future. And I think that's almost more important to me than certainly more important to me than party.
I'd have to say with the party, just because it's hard to get something done when it's just like, vote Trudeau because he's going to do this. It can't take one man to do everything now. You need a whole party. Even with a minority government, it's even harder to have more drastic change happen.
Most parties now are not as distinct as they have been in the past, so their individual platforms will be how will they address deficits and things like that. So those will be issues to be dealt with as each party offers them.
The ideology between Conservative and Liberals is so similar, they just gloss over it in a way that makes it seem like they're slightly different, right? So I think what they say they're going to deliver matters a lot more to me.
I personally would say both. I would not segregate them into separate categories at all. I think that a party is only as good as its platform, and if you don't have a good platform, I don't care how charismatic you may be as a leader or as a person that's running, you need the platform. So probably when I think about that now, the platform would be most important, but a charismatic, well-adjusted leader is also extremely important.
For me personally, it's what they talk about, right? So I think it's about the platform, right? How they're showcasing themselves, what their beliefs and values are, right? Because at the end of the day, we're buying into the person, we're buying into the people, the leaders, not just, what they represent, but the person themselves, their character and their values.
It used to be the party, I felt, but platform now.
Why did it change?
because I was a Liberal all my life, mainly because my father was, and I just stayed on, and there's more to it than just being a Liberal. The platform is more important.
I think because the party, you know, has a lot of like reputation, but they don't always follow through. So it's nice to see what changes they're making with the new platforms and stuff like that, and what they're willing to change.
You know what? Each election I've switched. I never go for one color. I always pick the best at the time. So I review everybody's thoughts and you know, all the things they want to go through, and that's how I pick. You know, I do my research, and yeah, you can't just pick one color. You know, you got to be open to other ideas.
What good is the party without a good platform? You know, they have to be more than just words. It has to be action added to those words, and I don't really see a lot of that. I mean, I think we're doing pretty well right now, but it could be better, it could be worse.
Personally, I think it's a platform, and obviously that's to me. I mean, I voted for various parties before, supported most of them, and so for me, it's platform.
You know, it's what the party stands for. It's not how pretty people are in that party, it's what they stand for. If it aligns with what my beliefs are, that's what I'm going to vote for.
Platform of the party, probably. I don't care what party's in, so long as they're actually doing something that's going to prevent, you know, severe climate catastrophe within the next 10 years.
I see the party as sort of like an image or a label. And I think it's more important to focus on the issues at hand.
Probably the platform, because what they promise to do is more important than what the actual party is, because I think Canadian parties are all pretty similar. So I would probably vote for the person that I agree with the most.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.